This holiday season, we all wish for hope and healing. Children and families who spend their holidays at the hospital deserve a reason to believe in first steps, in giggles, high fives, and hugs. For 150 years, Children's National Hospital has provided world-class care and groundbreaking research. Please donate today to help patients and healthcare heroes this holiday season. Visit childrensnational.org/holiday. That's childrensnational.org/holiday.
Right Night is a talk show with published authors, writers, and content creators discussing both the creative and technical sides of writing, as well as the industries surrounding it, from novels to screenplays to comics and more. And now, here's your host, author Travis I. Sivart.
And thank you to Cogsley for that wonderful intro that he made over this past week. So, let's see. Kennedy's, your name changed, Cogs. Okay, I'm Travis, I'm your host, and tonight's topic here on Right Night will be... First hour will be ideas versus doing. Second hour in the technical hour will be punctuation pauses. And let me, since we're running a minute or two late, jump right over here into intros. We're just going to go clockwise directly above me, starting with Aaron.
Hi, I'm Aaron Kennedy. I am the author of the Persona Non Grata book, which is part of the Ships of Valor series. I'm here because I am more of a technical writer, but I've also got published fiction works. I've got a master's in leadership, working on the PhD, and kind of a jack of all trades kind of guy.
Very good. Then going over to Michael in the middle.
Hey everyone, my name's Michael Thompson. I am an author and illustrator. I write all sorts of fiction, and my latest book is Chicken Boy and the Might of the Monkey Man. Action, adventure, superhero, comedy.
And it's also your birthday. Happy birthday, buddy. Thanks for joining us
Thank
on
you.
Your special day.
Happy birthday.
Absolutely.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
And then going to the upper right, we have Tara.
Hey, I'm Tara Muller. I am a 20-year veteran editor, published author under the pen name E.G. Gaddis, latest of which is my Clan Campbell steampunk series for LGBT teens.
Very good. And then in the bottom right, saving the best for last, is a skeleton with some woman in front of him. Tempe.
Hi, I'm Tempe Wade. I'm the author of the Timely Revolution book series, Revolutionary War, adventure, time travel, fantasy, all sorts of stuff tossed in there.
Good stuff.
And that's Bucky.
That's Bucky.
That's Bucky.
Like Bucky Barnes from Captain America?
No, Bucky the medical skeleton. That's the
Right.
company who makes it.
Oh, nice.
Gotcha. Now, I wanted to ask you a quick question here, which I meant to ask this before the introduction so you could answer it in the introductions, but I forgot to. Real quick, do you guys ever write things that are specifically topical to calendar events, such as St. Patrick's Day is this week? And let's just go in the same order we introed in, starting with Aaron.
Kind of. I will make sure to include events that happen. In my current book, I make a reference to the anniversary of the moon landing. That's one of the ones. And then I'll try to make the world exist on a regular time schedule. So, hey, Christmas happens, Easter happens, that happens. So I try to include them in there so that there's something going on.
But not necessarily as they happen in the real world where you feel the urge to write a story along with it.
No, not so much.
Okay.
Although on Reddit they've got a writing prompts thing, and a lot of things will pop up on there, and I will go into those.
That'll be a topic one day soon.
Exactly.
Okay, Michael?
I think the only time I ever did topical writing, I tried my hand at doing some Chicken Boy webcomics a couple years back, and like I had a summer vacation themed comic. Chicken Boy, the one time he goes on vacation, a bunch of giant monsters attack the beach, and so but that's the most I've ever done. I don't because things come out when they come out, so
Right.
I don't really like to tie anything to anything in particular. No.
Very good. Now, going to Tara, and let me add in here, keep in mind for topical things, it could be like, do you write winter scenes during winter and summer scenes during summer? Also, that could apply too.
Poetry, but not long format stuff.
Tara?
Well, now that you've changed it, I almost have to say yes. I don't really for like holidays or stuff like that. But I have been inspired to write something with weather. I tried to write a short story once when we had a hurricane come through. I've written poetry in response to, looking at snow outside the window falling. But as to, Patrick's Day or St. Patrick's Day or Valentine's Day, no. I think there's just no emotional content there for me. Oh, that's God telling Valentine's Day.
Yes, thanks for
no
mentioning. Yeah,
emotional
Valentine's
content.
Day, no emotional content. Got it.
Yeah.
What about you, Tempe?
No, I typically stay away from them because I do Revolutionary War, so a lot of the holidays now didn't exist back then, so I typically just, I brush right past them. I do write, winter scenes, summer scenes, that type of thing, but yeah, typically I stay away from it. And Tara, I hate Valentine's Day too, so don't feel like the Lone Ranger.
There's actually a pretty decent rom-com out there called I Hate Valentine's Day. It's not bad. It's not the best one, but it's not bad. For myself, and I think it makes sense if you're a blogger to write more topical things with calendar events. I love to write in seasons that either I'm enjoying the hell out of right this moment or miss. It doesn't necessarily have to be the one I'm in, but a lot of times it'll relate to where I want to be versus, if I'm really enjoying. The only other time I write calendar-based events is in my role-playing games. I will make holiday-themed adventures for that week. So,
Yeah, it's fun.
no, yes, Aaron?
All right, now Tempe, you write historical novels, so
Right.
there's a lot of research involved and things like that. Do you try to tie in events as they happened at that point, not necessarily as it's happening now, but from that end? Like, hey, you said it didn't really exist, but George Washington's birthday, he was alive.
Yeah, I do, like, especially with the battles, the timing on the battles, the timing of, when I research, I make sure that George Washington was here at this time, Ben Talmadge was here at that time, and I do it that way. So, but yeah, and when it falls that time of year, that does come into play, like Valley Forge was in the wintertime, so you had to write. It was cold. So, and supplies were low. So yeah, when it comes to the historical part of it, I do. But as far as just regular holidays, I don't put those in. I just leave them out.
And a follow-on for that one, but this one's for Michael. You lend more into the comedic side of things. What about our fake holidays? Pi Day, which is today, 3/14, or May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. Those kind of things. Did you do anything like that within Chicken Boy? Because they're not necessarily tied into real things, but do you take advantage of the puns and stuff like that?
Oh, there's lots of puns. Maybe seasonal, but not any particular holiday. My favorite season is fall. Chicken Boy 4 takes place in the fall, the very beginning of fall, because the previous book was plant-based villains, so it's kind of symbolic. All the plants have been defeated, I guess, in the fall. But no, I don't do anything like that. Just poetry. I do definitely. I am really drawn to nature in different seasons, and that sort of informs my poetry writing sometimes.
Okay. Now I want to remind everybody, us on the show, as well as the people watching the show, or even the folks listening afterwards in the podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, etc. When you hear this noise, that means I'm going to read some viewer comments when we take a pause between whenever the person talking is finished. And real quick, I also want to mention the coronavirus. So it's a tough time. It's a weird time. Talk about living in interesting times. And a few things I want to say about the coronavirus is, first of all, use your common sense. Keep safe. Second of all, to quote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which as a writer is just an essential in my opinion, don't panic. Keep in mind, whether you are more prone to getting ill or less, everybody's not you, and everybody's going to react differently. But everybody, as I've talked to, is confused by the toilet paper buying and the panic mode and doesn't actually know anybody doing either of those things, but it is happening nationwide, worldwide. So all I always say is, remember, not everybody's like you. Some people are going to be worried more because they have reasons, or not, depending on the person. But that's okay, and the people that aren't panicking or blowing off, that's okay too. But do wash your hands and continue to do so once there is not a threat of an epidemic or a pandemic, please. Stay 6 feet away from anybody. Again, good advice whether there's illness or not going around, ever. And I think that's pretty much take care of yourself. And as Tempe said earlier on her Instagram, this is the perfect place to come and socialize where we promise no one will get infected from our interaction. So, now any of you guys got anything to add to that? Oh, if you're going to read up on this stuff, please go to the World Health Organization websites, the CDC. Tara's mentioned a few places she goes from other countries. Don't get all your information straight from a news website such as CNN, Fox News, etc. Tempe?
Yes. Please keep in mind your local businesses that are mom and pop places. They are suffering tremendously. I live in a tourist town, and the restaurants, if you don't want to go out, fine. Get takeout, buy gift certificates, use them later. Let them get the money now. People are suffering, and it's trickling down through the economy. And we're kind of all in this together. So let's kind of help each other out and do what we can where we can.
Yeah. And also keep in mind, guys, this isn't going away tomorrow. If you do your research on these sort of things, they last years. Okay? We're shutting everything down for 2 weeks here and there. This is going to take years to run its course. It's going to happen. There's going to be rises and falls, peaks and valleys amongst our country, other countries, etc. So just a little common sense. Maybe fist bumping or elbow bumping for a while instead of handshakes. I hate to lose a good handshake, but perhaps we've got into a population growth where it's better not to shake hands all the time.
We incorporated butt bumps today, so they weren't easier.
Yeah, they always yell at me because I drop trowel before doing it.
Well, and you don't use your butt.
Moving
on a lighter note,
with the topic. Oh, yes?
The World Health Organization, an outstanding organization, they did say that dogs are not capable of passing on the coronavirus. So the quarantine on dogs has been lifted for movement. So just to get this straight, who let the dogs out?
No.
Which, by the way, apparently bats, camels, cattle, and cats can carry this type of virus. There's none on record in civilization where a cat has had it or anything like that. But it's just, I thought it was interesting. From cats to camels to bats, I'm like, wow, where's that connection genetically? Just keep it in mind.
Very different.
Well, I mean, if you put all three together, they would kind of look like a dragon.
Moving on with the topic.
Yeah.
So, first thing I
Furry
want to
dragons.
talk about is ideas versus doing. This is our creative hour. We're already a bit into it, so keep that in mind. We will do the makeup time at the end of the hour and give us a full hour on the topic. So, as writers, as human beings, we always have all these ideas, and maybe we write them down. Hi, do you have time to hear about reporters' notebooks or steno pads? But we always have these tons of ideas, and then we have actually doing things. So, Tara, since you weren't here last week, let's start with you on this one, if you don't mind. It's how do you balance ideas versus doing?
Usually with an idea, I have so many notebooks. Write them down, and then I'll usually try to write something with it. And I don't want to discuss how often it's like it just doesn't work.
No,
I
actually,
get
let's discuss how often.
a lot of the time, it doesn't work.
This holiday season, we all wish for hope and healing. Children and families who spend their holidays at the hospital deserve a reason to believe in first steps, in giggles, high fives, and hugs. For 150 years, Children's National Hospital has provided world-class care and groundbreaking research. Please donate today to help patients and healthcare heroes this holiday season. Visit childrensnational.org/holiday. That's childrensnational.org/holiday.
Sling TV, built to save you money and bring you the channels you love, including ESPN, AMC, HGTV, and more. Watch your favorite comedies, dramas, suspense thrillers, news, sports, and more for just $35 a month. And your first month is only $10. Sign up now and start streaming right away on your TV, phone, and tablet. Take control of your TV solution with Sling. It makes TV flat out better. Go to sling.com to sign up now and get your first month for just $10.
And I might come back to it 2, 3, 4 times, trying to make it work if it's something that I would really like to work. And I have a lot that still haven't. I have other ones that surprising shift into something a little different once I get working with them. I tend to be, writing several different projects at one time for that reason. Because I'll get an idea and I'm like, okay, I got to get it started or it's I'm going to lose it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there are good ideas. There are bad ideas, and sometimes a bad idea actually will make a good book.
Quite often. Okay. Who else has some thoughts on ideas, Aaron?
Well, and when she's when she's talking about this, you got the concept, some core concept for the seed idea. This revisits something that we talked about last week. Check out the podcast if you didn't previously. We talked about like Chris Claremont or Terry Pratchett. They drop these little seeds that are available to grow into something else. They're not necessarily a plot or anything like that. It's just, here's an idea, and I can either foster it into something beautiful or something horrible that needs to be burned with fire. Michael, you when you got the Chicken Boy concept, I mean, he looks like a baby vulture.
Yeah.
We didn't call him Vulture Boy, we called him Chicken Boy.
That's right.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
That's just a 9-year-old's mind, and a lot of my earliest books were things that I created around the age of like 9 to 12. And then my adult self adapting those and taking the untamed creativity of the child Mike and crafting this this thing that adult Mike would believe and buy into. Like in World of the Orb, I had there was a little bit more technology in the world in my 12-year-old draft when I first did World of the Orb, and I had to solve those problems, being like, this is more of a magical world. What do they have, and what materials can I use to affect what I'm trying to do? And those limitations that you have based on your genre and based on the type of story you're writing breed really cool creative things that bring it to fruition.
So, Michael, with moving forward to what you're writing now, such as Winslow, etc.,
Yeah.
how do you choose what to take from an idea, and how many of those do you get, how often? And how do you choose what to take from an idea into an actual moving it forward and doing it?
Okay. When I get an idea, which I can't tell you, I don't know if I know how often it happens. It's sporadic, and it will usually be a scene out of context that will come to me. Like for instance, the first image that I got of World of the Orb was of the Death Snake chase in the middle of the book, of the broken little life raft skipping over these waves, and this gigantic amalgam of reptile and snake pursuing them in the current. And I was that was when I was 9, and I was like, what is that? So then from that, I spiral out and I try to answer questions. Who are the people on the boat? How did they get there? Why does the sail look the way it does? How is this happening? So it's like you're interviewing yourself, and then you're basically trying to I guess the idea is the wild creative part of the mind, and then the doing part is the problem solving mechanical part of the mind. and it's like a puzzle. It's like a puzzle where you're painting the pieces as you're putting them down, and you're building it out.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Segueing over to Tempe, what fen-fei fuckery is this? Because you've got kind of a historical context here, where you got an established seed. It's already grown, but you're going to pull a leaf off of it and go someplace else. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's pretty much my entire series. Tara will tell you, when she first read my first book, she would go through it. She was like, what is this? This doesn't make sense. And it would be a book, the next book, or a couple of books later before she'd go, oh, wait a minute. I remember that. So, I don't put anything in the book that won't tie in at a later point.
Okay.
So when I'm writing stuff, and back to the one character, the Finn's Fey fuckery, Finn has become a uniting element for my book series and for my romance series. He's just one of those characters that he pops up everywhere, and he's easy to pick a story off of.
We have a comment from one of our regular viewers here who I think this probably, the topic itself speaks to them. Sarah asks, when it comes to ideas versus doing, I find actually doing the ideas pretty much difficult, probably more difficult than the creating the idea. The main reason why is because of time management and attention span. So this is what I was trying to get out of each of you, and I want each of you to have a chance to answer this question. And Tempe, since you were just speaking, let's go with you. So how do you take an idea you have once you're like, hey, I want to work on that, and actually start working on it? Again, time management, attention span, all the things that real life puts on us as writers.
I think, and I've made this point before, I don't write like other people. I just sit down and I start typing and I write what comes to me. And, I make myself sit down at 10 o'clock at night and write till 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. And I just write what comes to me. Now, granted, I've gotten 50 pages in and decided, I don't like this. And I've completely chunked it out the window. And that's, several days worth of work down the toilet. But, it comes down to, you just got to make yourself do it. You've got to make the time. You've got to, delegate the time and put your mind to doing it and just sit down and do it.
Now, Aaron, same question for you, but I want to point out you have a full-time job, a wife, a kid who's now an adult but still at home. You're working on your master's or doctorate?
Doctorate.
And you're also studying master electrician stuff at the same time.
Yes.
So you've got a little bit that keeps you busy, and I still know you geek out on other things and catch movies and eat pizza.
So probably the easiest way to describe this, because Tempe mentions it's basically she treats this like a job. She treats it like a full-time job where, it's not just 40 hours. She's a business owner, so she's doing 60, 70, however many hours to make a good product. For me, the writing side is a bit of a habit, whereas some of the things are going on. This is this week's schedule. Assume worked 8 to 4 every day.
Mm-hmm.
Monday, got home, had D&D game, my other group. Tuesday, ran over to a guy's house and finishing up an installation for him. Tuesday I actually took the day off. Wednesday, went over to his house, then got home, did college. Thursday, lodge meeting. Friday, finished up the install at the one guy's house. This morning...
Let me direct you back to, how do you work it in?
You make time. You just have to make time. You gotta go. Me, it's one of those, okay, what can I avoid doing? And then my creative outlet takes over. So if I'm trying to avoid writing schoolwork or things like that, all right, you wait till the last minute. It only takes a minute. It's due by 1 a.m., and I will wait until 10 p.m. to actually start on it. But the schoolwork, it's all writing based as well. It's just a different style of writing. It's a different creative outlet. In my master's degree, I actually cited Muppets Treasure Island and the cabin fever effect for that. I will pull things from there because sometimes it's just a case of, hey, this seed belongs here or it doesn't belong there, and it's just, okay, can I use this on one side or another side? And sometimes it's one of those, oh, I can't use that in my fictional writing, but I can use it in my technical writing or my opinion pieces. And this week, I probably did about 6,000 words or so. Not as much as friggin' Tempe or friggin' Michael, but enough to where I feel like I'm actually writing.
Okay. Now, Tara, I see a lot of nodding going on over there, so I think you might have some thoughts on this.
Well, I don't do dishes and I don't do laundry all the time. I let that pile up. But yeah, you have to make the time. And there are times when I feel that I have to write. That there's an idea that is just, it takes over my head. It takes over my brain. And if I don't get some of it down on paper somehow, whether it's, with pen in a notebook, on sticky notes, or I've got my laptop and I can put it down, it doesn't go away, and it just kind of like knocks on this little door saying, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here.
Something you missed last week, if I can interject real quick, is apparently Taco Bell napkins work really well for Tempe.
Except
so you
they've
know.
taken them out of the lobby now. So,
only at the ones you go to.
only the ones I go to.
No, they didn't. They just stole them for toilet paper.
Maybe that's what it was.
Go on,
somebody wrote a novel on them.
Desperate times, especially at Taco Bell.
But time management's always important, and a lot of times I think for writers there's a drive that you have to write. If you can't treat it like a job where you sit down and you write for a designated time every day, or that you don't have that drive where it's something that you have to put out, it's part of you that has to get put out and put on paper, it's not going to work. A lot of times it's one or the other. It's really good when it's both, but yeah, I mean, there's times when it has to be out, it has to come out, and like I said, that's when I'm like, okay, the dishes pile up, the laundry piles up, and the puppy or the cats aren't fed until they're gnawing on my legs. So,
Michael, anything?
Luckily, the husband and the kid are old enough to feed themselves now. So.
In theory.
In theory, yes.
Aaron, and then Michael, please.
Okay, this one's actually for Michael.
I want him to answer this first, though.
Okay, check. And just toss this out there because you've got basically an even split between the artistic side of drawing and the writing side of it.
Yeah.
Toss that in there for some nuance because we're primarily word folks as well as you've got pictures.
Yeah. Illustrating is another form of storytelling, just entirely visually. So when I was illustrating Chicken Boy, that was a lot of what I was doing for the past. A lot of 2019 was a whole lot of drawing and putting in blades of grass to meet the new formatting standards. But expressions are really important for drawing and stuff. But in terms of the doing part of making yourself write, I have a gigantic, obnoxious calendar that will shame me if I'm not scratching things off of it. But
you should call your roommate a calendar.
But going to what Aaron said, making a habit is really important too. So the calendar is something that I adapted from my time at George Mason University. That was how I kept on schedule because there was a whole lot of writing involved there. And scratching stuff off became very cathartic. It's like, oh, it's done. But you got to develop that habit too, because you can also develop a habit of like, oh, I'll move this to this day, I'll move this to that day. I have to maintain the fear of the calendar, so that I can bring those things to life. And I put like little milestones that I want to hit, and usually it's divided into chapters. Because that's kind of more how I think, more so than the word count. Because, like I said, I get those scenes, and then I know that's going to happen at some point in that chapter. Especially for Winslow, usually it's like a couple major scenes, and then the dialogue is more in the moment. But
Very
Yeah.
good. Now, Aaron, you mentioned a few things about habit and whatnot. Do you have more to say on this, and when you're done, I'll throw my 2 cents in on this.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it led to a question in regards to yourself. You're working on the book a month philosophy right now. Write it. Now, are you doing a word count goal, or just okay? I'm going to sit down every day and kind of check it off the calendar type of mechanism at the moment.
To give you the short answer, 2,500 words a day, 60,000 words ends the book. Gives me 5 to 6 days to edit, and then get it out the door. This also includes a little bit of time in the beginning of the month to do some research if I need to do research. To expand on that now, Jim here says, I wish I had that level of time management skills and discipline. I'm going to go over a few things. First of all, Tempe said she'd write on stuff, realize she didn't like it, and throw it out. I have thrown out.
This holiday season, we all wish for hope and healing. Children and families who spend their holidays at the hospital deserve a reason to believe in first steps, in giggles, high fives, and hugs. For 150 years, Children's National Hospital has provided world-class care and groundbreaking research. Please donate today to help patients and healthcare heroes this holiday season. Visit childrensnational.org/holiday. That's childrensnational.org/holiday.
You know the old saying, selling like hotcakes? What does that even mean? What is a hotcake anyway? They should change it to selling like Hondas, because right now Hondas are selling faster than ever. Probably because they're so rugged, long-lasting, and fuel-efficient. And if you want one, you should get to your local Honda dealer right away. Check out the 8-passenger Pilot, or maybe the adventurous Passport. But you gotta do it fast, because Hondas are selling like, well, Hondas. New models are arriving now. Don't wait. See your local Honda dealer today.
Over 50,000 words of previous writing in the past 3 weeks. Now, these are books that I wrote in 2008, 2012, whatever, that I wrote anywhere from 5,000 to 22,000 words on them. 3 different pieces. And I went through and gleaned what I can use, but the mass of it was like, this was a great writing exercise, but it's all trash. There's nothing I can use here. Something else, when putting ideas together, quite often you'll have a lot of little ideas, and they'll become a dot-to-dot puzzle. And you'll take 4 of your ideas out of 20, and you'll go, I can work these into a story together. And that helps with the idea and moving forward more than one idea at a time. Michael, I like your ideas about rewards and penalties. This is how video games and Netflix gets us. There is a dopamine release when you finish a season or a series, or get that new sword or that new mount in the video game. You can turn writing into that. Making lists, crossing things off the list, hitting that calendar, scratching it off, etc., etc. It can do the same thing. It's a matter of setting up your own psychology. And the penalties, which, Michael, it's a calendar mocking you, which I really want to know how the hell that happens. But
Well, you put the fish behind it, and friggin' every time you don't do something, you push the button, it goes.
You have a
Well,
laughing
just
fish?
if you seeing stuff that you haven't accomplished, that you set out to accomplish, that's not scratched off. That's where the mocking
Okay.
is.
So it's
Yeah.
from within. Is that-
Yes, it's an externalization of my interior perfectionist.
So to wrap all this up, in this comment for me, to wrap that up, not the show or the topic, because I definitely want to bounce this back to you guys. I'm trying to spit out all this. It's about discipline, habits, and shuffling, which is something each of you mentioned separately. Okay? Sometimes you only have so much energy, and sometimes your family has to take a backseat to the creativity, or the job gets a ding, or your internal chores of your own world get pushed back a little bit, because there is only so many hours in a day. What I will tell you, what most people don't think to push back, is how much Netflix or social media they take in. That stays the same. They're like, well, I only check it in the bathroom, but you're in there 20 minutes 3 times a day. That's an hour. To do simple math. For Tara, who's apparently only a writer. The discipline creates the habit. The habit is our end goal. And whether you write like Michael and you're like, I'm writing a scene, I'm writing a chapter, or writing like me where I have almost a very formulaic thing. And by the way, I look forward to the topic when we do planner versus pantser, because I'm going to show how it's the same damn thing. It's just
hot take.
yeah. Creating that discipline, it's no different from I'm going to lose weight, or I'm going to work out, or I'm going to save money for that new car. It's no different from anything else. Right here in front of me, I wrote out a schedule for myself, which, by the way, I wrote it out 2 days ago, and today was my first day to start it. Totally failed. All the way across the board except for this show.
Win!
Yeah, so my point is, you don't always make it, and you got to kick your ass a little bit. You got to ridicule yourself, mock yourself, and then reward yourself when you do it, which is how I have it set up. Here's my day job. Here's when I get home, because I do chores 3 times a day. Once before work, once when I get home, and once before bed. It's whatever needs done. Might be 10 minutes, might be an hour if I have to cook and make meals. And then the writing thing. And then either a stream like this, or the fun stuff where I get to go play a video game or watch a movie. And still at bed in a reasonable hour. We'll see how I do with all that. But yeah, that discipline will form a habit to where it is automatic for you. Just like getting up in the morning for work. Yeah, you might shuffle and grumble, but you know what motions you have to go through to get dressed, get out the door, and get to work. Yes, Aaron.
I got kind of a segue, and this one's for Tara, because we've all mentioned it independently. Lost work, edit it out. Friggin' if we had a product and we gave you friggin' X number of words, Tempe mentioned, hey, I just burned 50,000 words, it's gone. Travis mentioned that he friggin' lost similar. I've the first 2 chapters of my book, I just cut because I needed to increase the pace. Now, that's us on alpha level. When we get to you on the beta and the final edits, how much more are we losing? And this is just kind of an average based on experience. How much are you trimming out going, this doesn't need to be here, this doesn't do, you got to expand here, but how much work are we losing?
So editing for Travis and Tempe, there's not a lot that they are losing.
Okay.
Most of, and I think part of that is because they have beta readers. So they have folks that their first drafts or their second drafts are going out to that are giving them the feedback of what works and what's not working. Which means that when I get it, most of the developmental editing is done.
Okay.
So what I get to focus on then is the words, the pacing. Did you know you changed the eye color here?
Continuity and stuff like that.
Continuity, stuff like that. And so there's not a whole lot lost, or that I take out. I might put notes on there saying, hey, this slows down here. I got bored for a while. But I leave that up to the author, because like Tempe, her first one, I had all kinds of notes in there. I have no idea what's going on here. This doesn't seem to make sense here. Why is this happening? And then by the time the second and third book in the series came along, I'm like, oh, I get it. It was, because she has not just the shorter arcs of what's in the book itself, but also the longer arcs book to book. So now, in other authors that I have edited and that I no longer edit for, because there was a lot of fluff in their work and I was suggesting large edits, they basically told me I didn't know what I was doing and whatever. So because I edit fiction for the fun of it, because it's something that I enjoy, it's something that I do only for a select few folks that I know, so that if I get something and I'm a few pages in and I'm like, this is crap, I feel like I can tell them that. I have not had to with anybody. In my day job where I edit technical stuff, I've edited some technical documents that have lost whole pages. And when you're talking, a 25-page technical high-level report for the ACMAC, Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps, Some people get very, very upset when they lose 3 pages, and it's like, but you don't need it. You don't. He doesn't want to read that stuff. So a lot of times it depends on how much the author has put into it to begin with. Like you said, Tempe has said, I've thrown 50 pages away. And that's good, because there's a lot of authors that once they've written it, it's gold. It doesn't matter, and they're going to use it no matter what. And so, and for those authors, there's a whole lot more that gets cut out.
When I first handed my stuff to Tara, she gave it back very cautiously and worried that because she's lost friends over honest editing before. And she hurt my feelings. And I read, she only did like 3 chapters, maybe a little more, of a book I'd already published, because she very nervously questioned me about the editing and then offered, can I do it for you? And I got it back, and it hurt my feelings. And here's what I'm going to tell you. If your editor doesn't hurt your feelings once in a while, get a different editor, because you're not right all the time. And if you have beta readers, which right now, I don't actually have beta readers, Tara. The one book that you haven't looked at of mine, one person has read that, but the rest of it, I don't actually have beta readers. I have some, but I haven't actually had anybody read them.
Oh, okay.
So, they're there. Yes, Aaron?
No, finish up your thought.
Yeah, with your editor there is to make your product better. And if all they're doing is telling you, this is great, they're not doing their job well enough. I read George R. R. Martin, which I really enjoy it, Robert Jordan, Stephen King, and there's quite often I'm like, this shit didn't need to be in there. This is just wasted space. It's not important to the story. This chapter should have been 4 paragraphs, or whatever. And Brandon Sanderson's getting to that point now, too. Tempe?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you need to find the right editor for yourself too. You need to find somebody you can work with and can be honest with. When I first gave my stuff to Tara, I was nervous as all get out because I've never written anything. And then she messaged me and she's like, I think we need to talk about the first half of the book. And I said, okay. I said, but read the second half of the book first. And after she got to the second half of the book, she was like, okay, let me go back. And you need to find an editor that you can talk to, that works with you, not against you, and that can give you that hard criticism, and you can take it and go with it. Because as Travis said, in the long run, they're just trying to make your product better. And you need to listen to what they have to say. Tara, my first 3,000 words you cut out, you're like, you don't need this. And I'm like, what? Like, what?
If I can
And
interrupt real
I
quick,
took
Tracy,
and I took it out.
thank you for that subscription. Appreciate that. There's you. That's your birthday subscription, Michael. Bask in that. Aaron, yes.
Quick note on that. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got was the 2-person rule. If you let people read your stuff and 2 people make the same comment, or you agree with the same comment by 1 person, change it. The product, it's popping out. Like, hey, the pacing's slow here, and you go, is it? And you go, oh yeah, it is. Freaking change it. If 2 people are saying the same thing, you've got a bias of some type, and you're not seeing it.
Yeah, you're right.
And it's and in my book, one of the things that I did at the very beginning, I was trying to create a vocabulary that they were using to give it more of a period feel, and I used the term femme to refer to women. The guy is kind of an old school, and I didn't want to use dame, so I said femme. 2 people brought up, I'm like, you know what? Friggin' gone. And it's just little things like that that'll pop up. Travis mentioned Robert Jordan. Robert Jordan's bad about it. For those of our people that watch Netflix and things like that, if you look at like the Netflix Luke Cage series, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, they're all 10 episodes long. Luke Cage, the first season, could have probably been 6 episodes and been just fine.
Been better.
Oh, exactly. I mean, if they had stopped it at the end of the first arc, they would have been great.
Let me interrupt you real quick.
Go ahead.
The point I'm getting right here that I want to say right now is sometimes removing content makes your product better.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
It makes it tighter. You have this extra little bump in the road that's just a speed bump. All it does is slow down your reader traffic on the road of your story. And you don't want speed bumps. You want it to be the Autobahn, smooth and just cruising along.
Yeah.
Go on, Aaron.
And that kind of links back to the concept or the seed idea stage. And then when we get into the plot, what's the plot of your story? Can you describe it in two sentences? Hey, it's Buffy the Vampire Slayer with grandmas. Oh, okay. Which is just a reference to something else. Or, hey, it's historical fiction with Fae involved. Things like that. Or, hey, it's about a chicken boy who fights crime.
I'm still kind of stuck on the Buffy with grandmas. I'm still okay with that. I feel like Giles should be a young buff dude then.
He was.
At one time.
Go back and watch it again. He's young compared to us.
Shut your...
But the willingness to kill our darlings also comes into play.
That's Stephen
I
King's
talked to
phrase.
Travis. Yeah, I talked to Travis immediately after Tara did his first edit. I had to pull him out of the bathtub because he was naked. Like this.
That's just when Aaron comes over every time I'm in the bathtub naked.
Yeah, but normally you're not crying, at least not until I leave. But be willing to kill your darlings. There's nothing necessarily out there that this doesn't work. Toss it aside for the time being. 50 pages may be trash, or it may be recycled later.
Yeah. You don't want your readers to remember that they're reading. You want the experience to just play.
Something else to keep in mind, if they yank a big enough chunk, that's a short story for an anthology later, or a freebie to pull your readers in. You know, here's something that happened in the middle of that story that wasn't told. Have it for free.
Hey.
Yeah.
That's thinking like a businessman. Yeah.
And that's
it is a business.
All need to do. Tempe, I'll pass this right over to you in just 1 second. I see your hand. No, I said that. Forgot what I was going to say. Tempe, please.
Now, when I wrote the first book, I really was unsure of if it was crap or whatever, because I had done that before. When you get to the point where your editor sends you messages going, I can't believe you almost killed such and such off. I can't believe you did this. I can't believe. That's when I really felt like I knew what I was doing. I finally knew what I was doing when I started getting messages from my editor saying, she's in this. She's caught up in it. And that's when I really felt like I kind of, found my way with it. So,
With the whole kill your darlings thing and the business person thing and removing those, you can put all that stuff in there and ignore everybody else's advice. But the bottom line is, if you're writing that way, why are you even giving it to an editor? If you're looking to publish, I assume you want to bring it to a larger audience than your 7 friends or 20 friends or whatever it is. Listen to other people's input.
This holiday season, we all wish for hope and healing. Children and families who spend their holidays at the hospital deserve a reason to believe in first steps, in giggles, high fives, and hugs. For 150 years, Children's National Hospital has provided world-class care and groundbreaking research. Please donate today to help patients and healthcare heroes this holiday season. Visit childrensnational.org/holiday. That's childrensnational.org/holiday.
At Capella University, you're in control of your education. With the game-changing FlexPath format, you can set your own deadlines and move at your own pace. The faster you move, the more you save. Visit capella.edu to learn more.
Now, we've got a couple minutes before we take our break between the first half and the second half of the show. Let's bring us back to the raw things. The first half of the show is supposed to be ideas versus doing it. So we've mentioned the few things, the shuffling of priorities, the rewards or penalties, whether real or psychological, and then discipline forming into habit. What else do we have that can help people take, I have all these ideas, to reality there? Aaron.
All right. One of the big things we've talked about it being a business. Our buyers, the people that are buying the books, they're investing in us. They're essentially buying one share of us and our brand, and we want them to buy more shares. We want them to get their friends on board. We all know people that have tried to start a business of some type, and just remember, this is a business. And if you come to them with just an idea, they're going to go, okay, where's the product? Where are you at in the stage? What's the production level? If you try to sell this to a company, what are the questions they're going to ask there, and then use that mental model on the writing side? And that goes back to Michael talking about it last week and his elevator pitch, his ability to engage with customers. He's great at getting them to invest time, and that's their most valuable thing. And then the money, then you get them to invest the money on it.
Yeah.
And what that links back to, can you expand on that a little bit more, Michael, and then everybody else?
Well, in terms of the doing it thing, I recently implemented a vision board. In addition to my mean calendar, I have the friendlier, big, aspirational whiteboard, which was actually from my grandfather.
Oh, nice.
And it actually has some of these original drawings that I did on it when I was like 7, and he never erased them.
Because you did them in Sharpie, you little bastard.
No, those, yeah. But yeah, he put a box around it that said "Do not erase."
Oh.
But I put this up, and this is I think this has been a really cool way to always be have part of my mind on the future, on the big aspirational things. And you can do something, I think it's either the ladder or the waterfall method, where you put like the loftiest, biggest aspiration you can think of, and then you think, okay, to get to that, what do I have to do? And then underneath it, you write a slightly smaller goal, and a smaller and smaller and smaller, until you get to something that's very much within reach, and then you climb that ladder. And
well, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Yeah. If you're trying to drain the ocean with a spoon, you focus on the spoonfuls. You don't look at the ocean. But it's also really nice to.
You guys got weird hobbies. Real quick, let me say a quick shout out here to Huntress Lees. Let me know how you can pronounce. Thank you for the follow. Good to have you here in the tavern. Welcome to Right Night, where we're discussing topics creative and technical with different published authors. Okay.
One quick one for you, Michael. I don't know why you've passed up an opportunity. You've got your mean calendar. We need to get you a WWF Mean Gene and put it up on the calendar. That way you've got a Mean Gene calendar.
What's Mean Gene?
Yeah, welcome to the 80s. Moving on. Tara, I've seen you nodding along. You got some thoughts?
Yeah. Finish a manuscript. I know some would-be authors who are writers that are working on the same manuscript for 10 years. When I took my creative writing classes before I had a kid with Robert Arthur, I took class after class after class working on the first half of a manuscript. And he finally looked at me, I think it was the third time taking the class, and he says, "You don't get an A, you're failing unless you give me a completed manuscript. I want 50,000 words done by," he goes, "I don't care if you come to class or not." Still came to class, but I finished the last probably 30,000 words, probably the crappiest words, but I got to the end. And you have to get to the end at some point.
Yeah.
Because then I could edit the fuck out of it. I just did. I mean, then you can edit the words and get there. But if you don't get to the end, if you don't complete the story, you're never going to complete it. So if you want to be a published author, whether self-published or with an agent, you got to finish the manuscript.
That's really the bottom line, isn't it? When people ask me what's the hardest part of writing, I say starting it, and the second hardest is finishing it. The rest doesn't matter if you don't do those two things. So, and that's why we have editors, so we can write a mess and then clean a mess up. Mm-hmm. So, you always pay an editor, by the way. If you're going to publish, like, so people pay for your product, always get an editor. Your eyes are not good enough, and neither are your mother's or your dog's. Get an editor. But, yeah, it's just finishing it, isn't it? So you have all these ideas. I mean, how many of us have written part of a story which we're like, I wrote half a book. It's actually like half a chapter. But, you know, you're 15. You don't know. You think it's half a book.
Well, it's a sandwich. Friggin', there's no way to make half a sandwich. Try.
One piece of bread cut in half.
Yeah.
Now that's a full sandwich.
So, but the point with that is, yeah, you can write half a book and go, here's the ending, but it's not very satisfying. It's not going to be filling for your reader not because it was less words, because it wasn't completed. If you made a half a sandwich with one slice of bread without cutting it in half, and then it's like this open. So I'm struggling with this one. So let's take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll come back with the second hour. And in the second hour, we're going to discuss punctuation pauses. And we'll get to what that means. So if anybody needs a break who's here on the show right now, just make sure you mute yourself. Head out. Come right back when you're ready. And I will run off and fill my drink also. When everybody's back. Yes, Aaron?
You were going to talk about subscriptions at the break time,
I was. I just figured I'd let them get their headset off. You could just... Yeah, head on out, guys. We'll be here waiting for you. You got 3.5 minutes. I'm counting. I'm kidding.
Go.
Guys, I want to thank all the subscribers. First of all, thank just for showing up here tonight. Thank you for that. I am thrilled on our second week to have this many people hanging out with us, listening to myself and these other authors as we discuss these things. But the people that are throwing bits, donations, subscriptions, this is how you support a community. And speaking of community, there's Toey. Hello, Sarah, you have a good night. Thank you for joining us. But remember, by supporting this community, whatever way you do, you support people making dreams come true. We don't need to be on camera here doing this. We're doing this because we love what we're doing and we want to share it with other folks who want to do it also, or who are doing something else, whether it's drawing, sculpting, chipping rocks, as was mentioned up here earlier by Cold Brew, stone sculpting. We want to make other people have that urge to create or understand. There's people that understand the good, bad, and ugly of what they're doing. So thank you for subscribing, following, throwing bits, donating, and just showing up in general. It means a lot. There we go. Now, in just a minute, we're going to get back to it. I want to give everybody a chance. We'll do another round of introductions of everybody on the show, just in case you came in late and you're wondering who is who and what's this all mean. If you're listening to this on the podcast, on iHeartRadio, Spotify, or one of the other wonderful places, we have our podcasts up. Thank you for that. Don't forget you can join us live every Saturday night from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/Travis Tavern Talk for this live show, as well as other things throughout the week. I think that covers it all, Aaron. Yeah, what else? What I miss?
Travis mentioned support and things like that. We wouldn't be here without the support of others as well. Guys like Jersey's Carton Comics, John over there, and some of the things that Travis has got linked on the main page here. Please check it out, link through, take a look at the stuff. They're not sponsors, but they're the people that make sure that we kind of get things up and running.
You know something else I didn't mention? A great way of supporting when you're here. Just below the screen, there's a share button where you can share this stream to your Facebook, Twitter, or other places. So don't hesitate to do that and bring your friends in so we can all help them. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start going around the screen here while we're waiting for Tar to come up. Oh, Tempe disappeared again.
But while we got two people up, guys, please link your works and your personal brand up on the website. We didn't do that at the beginning of the hour. So Michael, Tempe, and then Tara when she gets back.
Tempe cannot, because she's unable to minimize our chat program without creating issues. So anyhow, what's it?
Yeah, it's.
Okay.
I've tried. It's not working for some reason. I'll have to look at that this week.
Not a problem. I will link that for you.
Thank you.
That is, what were the two main sites that we do for you guys?
TempeWay.com has got everything on mine.
There we go. Now, I'm going to start the introductions again, and we'll have Tara reintroduce herself when she comes back. She might be taking the walk with the dog. So, let's start right here. I'm Travis Sivart. I'm the host of this show, as well as published the Downfall series, amongst other books, including ones that I write right here on Live and Stream. Directly above me is Aaron Kennedy. Give him a 15-second intro, please.
Hi, I'm Aaron Kennedy. I am a technical and fiction writer. I've been published with the NCO Journal and the Army Times on my work with leadership and physical fitness. I've also published a book called Persona Non Grata, which is the first of the Ships of Valor series, a spacefaring military sci-fi novel.
Very good. Michael, introduce again.
Hi, my name's Michael Thompson. I write all sorts of fiction, and I illustrate, and one of my books is Winslow Hoffner's Incredible Encounters. It's a folkloric fantasy in the high seas about cryptids, sea monsters, and the gallant fisherman who happens to find himself in the wrong place at the right time to see them.
Definitely fun and clever.
Thank you.
Tempe?
I'm Tempe Wade. I wrote the Timely Revolution book series. I'm actually still writing the Timely Revolution book series. And it's just a work of historical, fantasy, fiction, Revolutionary War, all sorts of good stuff. That's the first two. I really need to get some books in here to have on display.
Beautiful covers.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tempe, I also linked the Purveyor of the Unusual as well as the Tempe Wade site for you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Props.
And Tara, for when she gets back, is Tara Muller, who publishes under her own name as well as E.G. Gaddis with Dream Punk Press, that she is the publisher, editor, and other hats. And a damn fine crowd to hang out with. Okay, let's start discussing.
At Capella University, education is as smart as the world around us. With the FlexPath format, you can take classes at your own pace, set your own deadlines, and even leverage your previous experience to move faster. Now that's smart. Learn more at capella.edu.
You know the old saying, selling like hotcakes? What does that even mean? What is a hotcake anyway? They should change it to selling like Hondas, because right now Hondas are selling faster than ever. Probably because they're so rugged, long-lasting, and fuel-efficient. And if you want one, you should get to your local Honda dealer right away. Check out the 8-passenger Pilot, or maybe the adventurous Passport. But you gotta do it fast, because Hondas are selling like, well, Hondas. New models are arriving now. Don't wait. See your local Honda dealer today.
Discussing the next topic, which, we need our editor type person, but we're going to talk about punctuation pauses. And what I'm talking about that is anywhere from commas to semicolons to colons to dashes to ellipses to etc. Tracy, thank you for showing me your bits right there in front of your son and everything.
On that note, and this is probably going to apply more to Tempe than Michael, third-party programs like Grammarly and stuff like that.
Hold on, wait. I'd like to start with this. What problems do we have? Where do we run into questions with how do you use this? Or do you guys just know it all?
Who do you want to go first?
I think I've got I have a decent idea of when to use certain things. I like dashes a lot. My mom and dad are some of the first people to read my books, and my dad initially was not a big fan of dashes, but I really like dashes. So
now, a dash or an M dash?
What's that?
A dash or an M dash?
An M dash. I'm not familiar with an M dash. That might be one thing. So that's a question I have. What's an M dash? I don't know the difference between that.
And what about you, Tempe?
I run into the problem. especially with the first few books that I write so fast because the ideas are just coming so fast that I leave most of that stuff out. And that's what Tara is for. And she's the first to tell you that's what your editor's for. So, because a lot of her work is just going in and cleaning up stuff like that I've missed. Yeah. Especially with my site, even when I'm looking back over stuff, I miss a lot of things. So, but yeah, you know, she has got me started where I do use semicolons a little bit more than I used to. So I can thank Tara for that. So, but yeah, going back to Aaron, Grammarly, I do run it through Grammarly's a big help, especially with me with my site. It catches a lot of things that I don't catch, and I just kind of run it in the background.
Tempe, something I will say is if you read your own work out loud, you'll learn where to put a lot of those commas in and semicolons and when to use the M dash versus a dash, etc. Now, what about you, Aaron? Did you have any issues when you started writing, or did you just know where everything went?
Well, a lot of it's experience. I've been a technical writer for 25 years now, so
you only use periods, no commas at all.
Huh? Well, no. Lots of commas, lots of colons, semicolons. There's not a whole. On the fiction side, I try to avoid them unless I absolutely have to have them, because I'll break up the thought better if I don't use it. Doesn't mean they don't exist. It's just one of those. It's superfluous is probably the best way to put it. If you need to have it, it's supposed to be there, but can you make it work without one? Some of the other things. Practice. And don't get me wrong, my technical skills have increased dramatically in 25 years, going from the bachelor's to the master's to the PhD. It just changes some of the toning things that go on, and that's all Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours.
Now, for me, when I started actually putting the words down instead of just scribbling in a notebook, I pretty much only used commas and periods. I was scared of everything else. And I would do a whole paragraph of, 30 to 50 words using only commas and a period at the end. And then you look at it, you're like, well, that's a really big mouthful. Got to break that up better. So there is a pacing, and listening to audiobooks has helped my punctuation a lot. Because when you're writing, you're just, as Tempe said, you're kind of just whoosh, there it goes, it's on the page. When you're reading with audiobooks in mind, which is somewhere between reading and storytelling, but not quite either one, you definitely learn some pacing. And it almost gives you a James Earl Jones, Morgan Freeman, Sean Connery kind of pacing. Not their voice, just they
nice
break...
Goat.
Nice coat?
Goat.
Goat, huh?
Nice goat.
I remember when James Earl Jones said that. That was Star Wars. But as time has gone on over the past 6 or 7 years, I am definitely, and some of it is thanks to discussions with Tara or other people like you guys. Some of it is just raw research, and others is practice or reading it out loud. But I am now using colons, semicolons, dashes and M dashes, which for a while it confused me. Every time I'd say dash, Tara would say M dash. And there's a difference. And I'm still not 100% sure what it is, but my guess is a dash is when you're breaking a sentence one time, and M dash is when you're bracketing something with them.
Oh.
Is that correct, Tara?
Nope.
Okay. What the hell's an M dash?
Right, so your M dash is when you're breaking part of sentence. Your N dash is technically it's a hyphen.
A hyphen, okay.
So
hold on, she's wrestling.
Stuff wrapped around the.
There you go.
Okay. So you have your N dash, which is the space of an N. Vice the space of an M.
Now,
which
can
is
you
your M dash.
do me a favor? Repeat that whole sentence, but like N as in Nancy, M as in Mary.
Okay.
Give us something.
So your N, right? Your N dash is the length of an N as in
again.
Nancy.
Okay, thank you.
Then your M dash is the width of your M as in Mike.
First of all, how do we create a double width dash?
So, when you are typing in Word, at the end of one word, you type 2 hyphens, and you immediately type the next word, and at the end of that word, it turns into an M dash.
No spacing?
No spacing.
So you have to put the dash straight up against the first letter of the next word.
Yes.
Who the hell came up with that?
Somebody at Microsoft Word, I think.
Let's drink to them, because they were drinking when they thought of that one.
And M dashes, basically, it's your hyphen. So it's when you're hyphenating a word.
Which one is that? N or N? Again, use
That
N
N as
Nancy.
in Nancy.
Okay.
The short one.
Okay.
Your single hyphen is basically used as a hyphen.
For making a compound word.
Yes.
So, and then the M as in Mary dash is one when you're using it like super commas. Or
Yes.
instead of parentheses, you're using this because it's not. It's almost a tangent on the same thing instead of a separate thought that you would put in parentheses. And when do you use dashes versus parentheses?
I'll tell you when I use it.
Mm-hmm.
With dashes, I always think of I use it a lot in dialogue, and it'll be like if I'm cutting myself off, if the character's cutting themselves off and changing a thought and then going back to their original thought.
You know, I think I only use it in dialogue.
Yeah, I think it's perfect for dialogue. Feels so right.
Well, that leads back to your questions about the parents. Who uses those as descriptives or friggin' sub thoughts, things like that?
Yeah. That's something I
do you?
use the rarest.
Not much. Most of my writing is dialogue, so I don't use it that much. Once in a blue moon for something might pop up, but for the most part, I don't.
Usually when I use parentheses, it's in internal dialogue. It's thinking. Now, Tara, I've seen you open your mouth to say things like 3 times in the past 90 seconds. So interrupt them. And what I'm going to do here, guys, I'm going to put Tara in charge. She's an editor. We're all mini editors. Don't get me wrong. But
When I am editing, and I come across either parents or these M as in Mike dashes, if it's like an exclamation, it's like, oh my God, this happened too, use your M dashes. If it's oh yeah, this happened, or it's like a little bit of information, kind of quietly, an aside, use parents.
Yeah.
It's kind of stylistic, but it helps your reader to start to understand. And a lot of times we don't use parents a lot anymore.
we're calling them parents now instead of parentheses? Are they the same thing?
They're the same thing. My apologies. I will try to use parentheses.
No, you don't have to. We just have to clarify for myself as well as listeners, viewers, etc. Same thing. We're just shortening a word, right?
Yeah, I use it as a short.
Okay, you kids and your fucking memes, whatever.
Well, that's what I call them as well. So
Yeah.
Well, that's why I saw that. I wasn't sure who was playing off who here, but I wanted to clarify in case I'm a little slow.
It's probably a technical writing thing, vice a fictional writing or other type of writing thing.
Well, we get
since
paid by
you're
the
like
letter,
both-
so, you know.
Any y'all ever use brackets?
No.
Aha.
Wait, you get
Being a
paid,
little
Travis?
squiggly.
Well, now that leads to one of the other things, because I've got a buddy of mine. He's got published novels as well, and what he'll do is he'll use an acronym, but rather than saying the word out or trying to dialogue it in, he'll just parents and then say it in there. That way, the reader knows, but it's not a sub thought or anything like that. It's just, hey, here it is,
Oh, I like
and he's
that.
kind of using it in lieu of a citation or a footnote.
That's fair. Okay.
But that's parentheses as opposed to brackets.
And it depends on whether you got a bracket within a bracket, because the parent bracket and then wiggly bracket.
Oh yeah. Wiggly doo dah.
What I usually do, if you state the acronym first and then followed by the definition, I use square brackets.
Okay, so let's talk brackets. Though these aren't necessarily pauses per se, let's talk about brackets. So we have parentheses, the wiggly brackets, and the square brackets. So when do you use what?
So square brackets probably aren't ever going to be used in fiction writing.
And just so you know, I don't know when to use them in
type of
trigonometry
creative-
either, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in technical writing, when you are using acronyms, there's the idea you have to define them the first time.
Yep.
In fiction, of course, you're not really going to do that because it just interrupts the reader. You're hoping that you introduce it in a way that it's in the conversation or in the flow of the writing, it's known. In technical writing, when you're quoting somebody and you're using an acronym for the first time, and that's, that's what they said, you define it afterwards and you would use square brackets.
Yeah.
Now, Aaron, I know you're a technical writer also, so I wasn't trying to shush you. I was trying to give
No.
Tara more of the spotlight.
She's far more proficient at this than I am. I'm a user-level technical writer. She is an editor-level technical writer.
Okay. It's
I've
but
never done technical writing. I've only been a technical editor, so.
okay.
I think in the very rare instance that there would be a parentheses within a parentheses, then you would use one of the different style of separators. I think it would go down to bracket, and then it would go down to the wiggly doodah.
Square bracket or wiggly doodah bracket?
Wiggly doodah is the last one, I think.
Well, it's the next one, because you can go back into parentheses again.
Oh, yes. There you go. I think that if you have a very complicated thought. And I've used, the only time I ever used a square bracket, I used it for stage directions in a play, because in that particular font, I thought it looked nicer than
I feel like if ever I write a first-person journal, like for Jack Tucker, I should write like 8 words in, put the first bracket, and then keep bracketing parentheses through the whole book, and like 8 words from the end of it, end bracket.
the inception bracket.
Yeah.
Now, here's one for you. Quotation marks. This is specifically for Tara, where the paragraph leads open with a quotation mark, and then they continue into a different paragraph. End quotation mark, no end quotation mark. You're still continuing the same process here, but we're moving into a dialogue thing.
So you have a paragraph where you've got speaker A, and they're speaking, and you go to a second paragraph, and they are still speaking.
Correct.
All right. That first paragraph, I would not close the quotation mark. Next paragraph, you start still because that indicates it's speech, but the lack of the end quotation should automatically let the reader know it's still the same speaker.
Which, this is a fun fact. I have done that before for multiple paragraphs. I want to say more than 2, and Tara, as my editor, has come back going, I don't know who's speaking here. And now, I want to make sure everybody understands, it was more than 2 paragraphs worth.
Yeah.
So it might be worth putting a clarifying action and breaking one of the paragraphs with he scratched his nose or waved his hand.
It's a rare thing, because generally in real life people don't monologue, but it did come up for me in Winslow, when Winslow was in more of a long format part of the story, and this was an especially advanced area because he was doing the dialogue of other people within his dialogue. So I had to indent down for that dialogue while keeping it within his quotation. And so I remember I was like, oh, how do I do this? So I picked up Brian Jakes, and because he does a lot of dialogue, and I flipped through and I found an instance, and I'm like, okay, that's my personal rule now. And so I did, the starting quotation. Starting quotation, go down, leave it open, starting quotation, space, single apostrophe for the dialogue within the dialogue.
Okay.
We got.
By the way,
Yep.
when I ring the bell, if you guys are done, say, Travis, what do you got? Let me know that you're done. That way I don't...
All
in
right.
case you're breathing heavy.
Yeah,
We
no
got it.
problem.
Dragon.
Yeah, but that was pretty much it.
Okay. You done?
Descending order. Yeah, I'm done. Go ahead,
And
Travis.
then you get to pick it back up, by the way, because Dragonflighter, who's one of our new Twitch viewers, says, I always thought those moments were confusing, and I struggle with formatting dialogue, so I'm glad that came up. The reason I wanted to read this is this doesn't ask a question or anything, but I want to encourage the viewers, we have professional writers right here in front of you guys. We have a professional editor, technical and fiction. So this is, if you try to take the whole show and turn it to your questions, we're not going to play along with that, but definitely jump in on this conversation. If you have something that fits your punctuation confusion, because I'll give you a quick hint, most topics on any of my shows are things I want to know more about. It's strictly selfish. So I have this in here because as I'm writing, I take it like a game when Tara is editing my work, to any feedback she gives me as my editor to make less of those mistakes in the next book I send her. So she has less work to do. I try to learn. Now, we all make random mistakes. And that's what I want her to be able to catch, as opposed to correcting my bad habits. So, yes, please go on. Yeah.
On that note, Drew Carey, the comedian, host of the Price is Right, made a comment when he had the Drew Carey show that one of the worst days he had was when he had a script approved as submitted from the censors. And he goes, oh, God. And this kind of leads back to Travis when he had a rough edit done by somebody other than Tara. And he goes, oh, wow, okay, it looks pretty good. And then when he got it back, yeah, it stung a little bit, but he was so excited because it was covered in red and those were room for improvement for him.
Right.
So, yeah, the game of, okay, let's see that I don't mess up any quotation marks is great, but we do want to see red on the page because it tells us, oh, there's room for improvement. There's things here. There's comments. Even if it's one of those, oh, my God, this makes so much sense, again, as Tempe alluded to earlier, where the editor's invested in what you're doing and it's not just a technical piece of jargon.
Yeah.
No, Michael. Sorry, go ahead, Aaron. Do you have more?
I had one other thing.
Bounce it back to Mike when you're done in case he had anything else to say. Go on.
I flashed this on the screen earlier. This is the APA manual, American Psychological Association manual. This is 6th edition. They're up to 7th. A cheap book to buy, 1st edition, 2nd edition, any of the old ones, because they drop in price. Go to a used bookstore, pick it up. They're all over the place, but it gives you 60% of the rules that you'll need for writing.
And if you need the up-to-date ones, OWL, online, OWL, it's the online writing lab.
Yeah.
I thought that was the something wizarding thing.
It is. It's
Go
both.
Yeah, it's both. But it has all of the different writing guides. APA is one of them.
Chicago.
MLA is one. Chicago. And something to remember, when, here, Aaron and I have been talking about technical writing, usually follows APA.
Yep.
Some will follow Chicago. Most English, when we're talking fiction, is probably closer to MLA style. But if you are writing... What is
APA? What is MLA? What are all these acronyms you're throwing around?
Associated Press.
No, American Psychological Association. Chicago is just another format. It's stylistic designs of how you're going to write. APA does in-text citations. Chicago, if I remember correctly, does footnoted citations to where it just goes 1, 2, 3, 4. When you're as a journalist, you would have seen, you would have been more Chicago style.
Not where I was.
Chicago
Go on.
or AP.
Yeah, we did
the
AP.
government has its own writing stock guide. The government printing office has one. Most publishers, Penguin, Avon, they all have style guides. They don't expect you to know them when you're submitting, but don't be surprised if you actually get an editor and that editor has stylistic changes for how that's different from what we're telling you today on how to use some of these punctuation marks.
Yeah.
A lot of them, they do it different. The United States Navy has its own
Yes.
style guide.
Oh.
Where I work, the command has a
You know the old saying, selling like hotcakes? What does that even mean? What is a hotcake anyway? They should change it to selling like Hondas, because right now Hondas are selling faster than ever. Probably because they're so rugged, long-lasting, and fuel-efficient. And if you want one, you should get to your local Honda dealer right away. Check out the 8-passenger Pilot, or maybe the adventurous Passport. But you gotta do it fast, because Hondas are selling like, well, Hondas. New models are arriving now. Don't wait. See your local Honda dealer today.
Sling TV, built to save you money and bring you the channels you love, including ESPN, AMC, HGTV, and more. Watch your favorite comedies, dramas, suspense thrillers, news, sports, and more for just $35 a month. And your first month is only $10. Sign up now and start streaming right away on your TV, phone, and tablet. Take control of your TV solution with Sling. It makes TV flat out better. Go to sling.com to sign up now and get your first month for just $10.
style guide.
What does a style guide mean?
Okay. It is how, very specifically, a publisher of whatever, whether it's fiction or my command publishes reports. In order to provide a consistency across all of the documents, because while I am the editor for where I work, there's probably 30 different people writing.
Mm-hmm.
It explains which basic, we use APA, is our basic. And then we also cite a couple of very specific scientific technical manuals for specific rules when we're talking about numbers, when we're talking about exponential numbers, when we're talking about citing formulas, etc. And
Can I
then
interrupt
it also,
you real quick,
yep.
Tara? And I think we're getting a little bit too far in the weeds. Let's say you've got a chapter. Where is the one? Is it centered? Is it off to the left? Does it have a picture behind it? Is the first line indented? How are the footnotes done? Are they in text citation or are they at the bottom?
You just said
Are they
picture.
Times New Roman?
Never mind. What I'm trying to do here, guys, some of these answers of the questions that I'm asking, I already know. But we're going to have people viewing and listening that might not. And this is what I'm trying to take it down to a very basic level. And like defining that acronym, you can throw one of these things out there, give a quick, short definition. They can Google the rest. But at least, and I'm going to play dumb with you guys and ask the basic questions forever. That's just going to happen, even though maybe we talked about it last week or last month. Because there's always somebody new that might be too shy to ask, what the hell does that mean? So part of me, if I roll it back to simplistic clarity here on occasion.
Oh, absolutely. But a style guide is basically a general look and feel of the document. And if it's produced by the same publisher, whether it's the Marine Corps, the Navy, or anything, they're all consistent.
It's the requirements of the publication house you're working with.
Yes.
Yes.
There we go.
And to make it look and feel the same.
Yes.
I want to give it back to you because you were talking about Winslow and how you were doing your indented thing. Did you have more to add to that? Because I didn't mean to get us so sidetracked here.
Oh yeah, no problem. No, that was about it. I think looking at other authors that you admire is a good way to see. And you're basically, as an author and as an independent creator, artist, you are going to end up creating your own style guide. So you may have something that you're going to build off of. Like, this will be my foundation. Like when I wrote journalistically, our Associated Press was our foundation. Like if there wasn't something specifically in the style guide, you would reference this, and you may decide that, or you may just build as you go. And that's sort of something that I do. There's and consistency is more important than correctness. So if you establish that, okay, I don't do this, but say you use brackets just because they look nicer, or I guess I did that once. But say as long as it's consistent throughout the document, your reader is going to sort of chunk into the mindset of the feel of your book. Yeah.
This kind of goes back to our comments about brand and things like that.
Yeah.
When they pick up a book, it's got to feel like, oh, this is a Michael Thompson book. This is a Tempe Wade book.
Sure.
Tempe, you're self-published through this, but if you were to pick up each of your books, do they feel the same, or have you made stylistic changes to where book 4, 5, 9? I think you're on 43 at the moment. Is book 43 stylistically the same as book 1? Knowing that we've got Tara is doing your editing, I imagine there's some consistency, but do you actively try to do this yourself?
Yeah, I think I stay pretty much the same throughout because with my books, where one drops off, the other one picks right back up, and I consistently wrote. I didn't take a few months off. I just, that when I finished one, the next day I picked up the next one. So, and it's important too when you find an editor that you can work with that you stick with the same editor, so you've got those consistencies. When you pick up the books, because if I use Tara for book 1 and then I use someone else for book 2, it's not going to have the same feel. And you guys are sitting here talking, I'm going, me right, send Tara, because I'm like all over my head.
Something I said last week is learn the rules, follow the rules, break the rules.
Yeah.
Tempe, as a new writer, you're learning them still. You might be writing book 8 right now, but there's going to be a certain point, depending how much attention you put on what you see these corrections come back, where it'll sink in naturally or consciously. You'll take that rule and decide to learn it and know it. Either way.
I have a confession to make. I don't look at the red edits.
You just click OK to everything?
I just automatically accept them, and then I go to the boxes, and I do the boxes. But the red edits, I don't even want to see them. I mean, that's just me. I don't even want to see them, so.
Give me 1 second, Aaron. I'll pass it right over to you, man. The whole learn the rules, follow the rules, break the rules, I think is very important. This is where you go to a style guide. This is where you go to editor, your English teacher, your other authors that you want to be like, whatever. But it's very important to learn the rules for consistency's sake for your readers, if nothing else. For your own knowledge and expansion. Hopefully, as a writer, that is a genuine in-grade urge in you to learn. And if it's not, I'll be nice and say, we're different people then. But yeah, once you learn it, follow them. Once you can follow them without really having to think about it, do whatever you want with them. Make it your own at that point in time. But it's like any career. You have to know how it's usually done before you put your own flair into it. Aaron?
Yeah.
Hey, Steve. Sorry.
Hi, Steve.
Yes, from Australia.
You're fine. So this was actually for you, Travis, because you've got multiple series. You've got your 27 Thoughts books. You've got your STEAM books. You've got your kids' books, all done under different authors. How do you balance the stylistic desire across your multiple personas, if you will? And I know this is going to apply to you as well, Michael, but he's got more books and more series, so I figured I'd hit him first rather than go, okay, we got the 3 sets that you got as well.
I definitely want to hear this.
First of all, from a business point of view, it's a bad idea. Talk to any business person. If you're going to open a restaurant, you want to offer very clear, concise, this is our fare. We're burgers, we're steaks, we're seafood, we're gyros, whatever it is. Same with writers. When we brand ourselves, people recognize. If people picked up a Stephen King book and it was a romance novel, they're going to be like, what the hell is this?
It's not a romance novel?
Yeah, if it said romance on the back, doesn't matter, because I have an anthology where people complain that it feels like a bunch of short stories put into one book. And it's marked anthology. They don't read. Readers don't always read.
My readers don't read.
But doing that, I have taken the drastic differences. So my children's books, pen name. To separate it for style reasons. The same with my adult humor, moved it into a pen name. Now, the fiction versus nonfiction I've done under the same name, but it's very clear in what is fiction, what is nonfiction. Now, to go a step further, and then I'll pass it over to Michael, a lot of times the way I make sure stylistically it's formatted, grammatically and technically formatted, I go back to the previous book and copy myself. And look at what I do the last book. Let me make sure, because my Journal of a Stranger, which is done in a first-person diary format, is very different from Portals, which is medieval fantasy, but it's third-person omniscient. And you got to make sure you're consistent. Michael, what do you got on this?
Yeah, I originally started writing under Mike Thompson, and then I started writing under Michael Thompson. And then it got too expensive to have multiple websites, so everything is Michael Thompson now. But stylistically, the differences across the books, I don't think manifest in terms of the different ways that I would use certain punctuations. I think automatically I have my internal style guide that I do across all of them. Like I remember, like back in World of the Orb, when I was writing that and actively, like, because that is a sprawling epic, like lots of opportunities for words and lots of opportunities for new rules to have to be written mentally for that style guide. I remember specifically, and this is one that I've noticed across all the books that I just do automatically, is how I use hyphens in a description. Like, say a creature is dog-like, I would do dog-like, and I know
Right.
that grammatically it's correct that you can just run it all together and have it be a single adjective, dog-like.
I hyphenate now too because of Tara and
Yeah.
Microsoft Word.
It's a lot easier. It was easier to read, and I remember coming across it when I had two instances, and I had to ask myself which of these looks better, and so I was like, okay, and I just created all these different possible words in my mind. I wrote them down. I'm like, if I have a noun that ends with an L and then goes into the other L of like, it's gonna look odd. So it's just these little tiny things that I think about. So in terms of that, I think my style guide has stayed the same, and in terms of the just the feel of it, it would be different ratios of how much dialogue versus how much imagery. So it's a little bit more mystical in terms of what's different across the books and across the properties.
You know, Michael,
But
I think
what's that?
you must have had a really big advantage, yet a bit of a disadvantage, by starting to write while you were still at school age. Because a lot of us, we wrote scribbles. And then we lived an adult life, and then we're like, oh, I'm going to write a book 20 years after being in school. So you kind of have to go back and relearn. You were in the core of it, which is an advantage. Yeah. On the other hand, the extra years of life experience gives you other threads and tidbits that you pick up.
Sure.
But I think
that the books I wrote at the time kind of lent themselves to where I was in my life. Like when I wrote my first when I wrote my first Chicken Boy book, I was 9, so the characters were 9, and then I continued to age, but that just that informed my experience with how I wrote it rather than where the characters are. So just remembering where I was mentally and how I would act. And then with World of the Orb, that I was writing since I was like 12, and then constantly rewriting. So the characters actually, I had this, I always liked writing the characters that were like in the exact same place in life that I was. So the characters started as 12 and then update to 13 and so forth and so forth. And then eventually I was like, all right, there's 16. I'm ending it there. And then I continued to,
I think
age.
16 is a good age for young adult characters. Not the genre young adults, but characters who are young adults. Because it gives them that control of whatever authority figures in their life, parents, teachers, police officers, yet the freedom of mind where they're trying to break out of it. I think it's a great cusp age. And then oddly enough, I think 22 is another great cusp age, because you are officially an adult, kind of out on your own with all the freedoms, and still have no clue what the hell to do with your world.
Yeah, sure.
And then there's 40, which is the same thing as 22, just 18 years later. Tempe, I've seen some faces and expressions roll across as we're talking. Do you have some thoughts on this?
No, I'm just kind of looking around to make sure I'm safe.
Make sure you're safe.
For my cat.
Looking out for the cat.
Yes, Aaron.
This was actually for Tara here, because what do you think about using stylistic differences to change tones of novels and things like that? And kind of harkening back to Tempe, I assume that as we've gone from book 1 through book 8, there's different tones, kind of like Star Wars, the original trilogy, where you go from 4 to 5 to 6. 5 is a dark movie in comparison. Should stylistic changes be used to kind of accent how the novel is changing or how the major story arc is going?
Tar, go ahead.
So I edit for Dream Punk Press, which is my publishing house, and we have a young author who wrote their first novel at 15. And stylistically, the writing is very different from anything that I write at the age that I'm at.
She's 24, just so everybody knows.
And I think it is very, very important when you're considering the style you're going to use, because that includes your word choice as to the age group that you are writing for. So this 15-year-old author was writing middle grade fiction, which is for the end of elementary school and the beginning of middle school. Very few commas, very few semicolons. You're talking shorter sentences and a lot of, to just be blunt, made up words.
Okay.
Because at that age, because you don't have the vocabulary at age 10 that someone has at age 30. You just don't.
Well, for the most part, I've known a lot of 10-year-olds that speak better than 30-year-olds.
That's true.
Well, if you just said you don't have the same, so.
That's true. Go on, Tara.
Yeah, I didn't say that one was that the 30-year-old had more, just that it was different. So, a lot of times your style and how you're writing, your word choice, you really have to think of your audience. And that plays a huge role in the voice that you use. Mm-hmm. And then to your second part, Aaron, because there are, in Tempe's novels, there are very action-packed sequences of stuff going on.
And fuckery.
Right. Where you have shorter sentences. You make sure that your verbs are very fast. You change the tempo of your writing so that the reader feels what's going on. Mm-hmm. Then in the more intimate moments in her books, again, there's a very different feel to the words. Again, to help the reader feel a little bit, the words become more sensuous. You're not going to be talking about smooth and silky and whatever in the middle of a fight. You talk sharp, you talk pointy, you talk blood, vice, yeah. Okay? And then, so I think, yes, to your question about does the word choice, does the style that you use, even down to the punctuation, impact the story? And should it be? And I think the answer to that is yes.
Is there any one of us here that if we wrote a young adult novel or a middle grade novel, probably better than a young adult, wouldn't change how we format our sentences? I wouldn't use nearly as many dashes and semicolons and whatnot. And by the way, in each book that I've sent Tara right now, there's probably 4 to 5 places per book where I use a semicolon for itemized list. And then there's other places where I use it to break the thought, like a super comma. So would any of us not change how we write if we were writing for grades 4 to 7?
Well, I mean, that falls under the know the audience kind of thing.
Right.
Whereas stylistically, we got format. I'm looking more at the formatting side, but absolutely the tone and the tempo and things.
Not even talking about tone and tempo. I'm just talking about punctuation, how you format a sentence. I wouldn't use the same grammar or punctuation that I use in my other novels if I'm writing for a younger crowd.
I guess that's true. Yeah. I guess I wouldn't go like mega advanced in a kid's book.
So your sentence length impacts your pace.
Yep.
So you're not going to have rambling sentences all the time in a middle grade novel.
Right.
Most of the time you're going to have the shorter sentences and the reduced number of words in the vocabulary.
Like William Shatner.
Only because most of them aren't going to know. Yes, you have some that are going to know longer words, but most of them aren't. Now, you will have episodes of rambling because if you have a character in a middle grade novel who's just having these random thoughts and the anxiety and whatever, you would still have that in part to create a little bit of anxiety in the reader, but you don't want it all the time because they're kids.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's part of the use of, even in an adult novel, if you want tension, if you want anxiety, you would change up your sentence structures depending on, to help with the mood of the scene.
Mm-hmm.
You might even do that if for characters. You might have one character who they speak in shorter sentences and with a reduced vocabulary because that's that character. Then you might have somebody say, you have someone who's a doctor.
Yeah.
They're not going to speak the same way as the person who just got their GED, and that would help with your writing to give you more depth to those characters.
I want to bring it back to the original topic of punctuation pauses.
Yes.
Why don't you take a minute and go through the different things that you like as an editor, maybe quote one book versus your personal opinion on where to use what, and then each of us will go around and ask questions or add to it as is appropriate. So, we're talking about commas, semicolons, colons, dashes, etc. When do you use each one of these? What's the progression from the most common to the least common, and why the change between one to the other?
Okay. Most common is a period. It's the end of a thought, end of a sentence. Commas are used to delineate a simple list or to set aside a clause, a sub-thought in a sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Semicolons, you can use them, like you said, to break up a list that's a more complex list, meaning you've got commas in each item. You're not just saying the ball,
the foods I
the
like
train.
is hot dogs, hamburgers, and steak, beans, cucumbers, carrots, rice, pasta. So each one of those groupings.
Right. Semicolon is also used when you have two sentences whose thoughts or ideas or themes are very closely related, and you don't want to use a period. It really is a lot of times in fiction, especially, a stylistic choice. In technical writing, you probably never use a semicolon because you're trying to get across thoughts very, very clearly.
Short, crisp
so
ideas.
You tend to use shorter.
Yeah, we break it into colons or tables or something like that if we've got to expand on it.
I never underestimate a bulleted list. Delicious in technical writing.
So for fiction, so you have that semicolon. When you have a full colon, means you're going into an abrupt list, something. I don't usually see a semicolon in fiction because all of time, I know you've got. Yes, you've used some in this novel, Travis. I recognize that.
You are the exception.
That's why I said I don't usually. You use them actually quite well.
Oh, good to hear. I was waiting for the red lines to come
I
back.
changed a couple of your semicolons to colons, actually, because usually a colon is to indicate you're going into a list of some sort. And again, you don't usually see that in fiction. What have I missed?
No, I think you've...
Parrots.
I think...
Quotes.
Okay.
Well, not quotes, but dashes. Especially dashes.
So, quotes, obviously, when someone is speaking.
Right.
And so let's talk a little bit about when you have somebody speaking and you're putting in the who said it, what they're doing.
Hearsay type things.
So you have the words, you have something that identifies who's speaking, and then you have more words that they're speaking. Do you use commas or do you use periods? And it depends, because you can have a direct attribute meaning he said, in which case you would use usually a comma. All right, because that's the full sentence. He said yada 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 with a comma.
If I can interrupt real quick. First of all,
Yes.
Rabin, who's one of our viewers, delightful writing stream of his own, says I use prose, comma, or in my prose, commas are used too much. But Steve says, I tend to, ... a lot of my writing, ... not sure why, ... just a bad habit. Steve, here's what I'll say to that. First of all, Tara, please address ellipses. We need that too. We forgot about those. But I use those a lot, and Tara, as she took over editing for me, I don't think I really ever use them at all unless if it is an interrupted thought at this point in time that gets cut off and dropped by a pause followed by something else. But I'll let her talk more about it. Rabin, since I'm reading things here, says M- quotes for emphasis. So I'll throw all that at you. And Aaron's got something.
One thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because you mentioned it, friggin' an interrupted thought. Whereas, let's say I'm talking to Travis and he cuts me off. Are we talking ellipsis, or are we talking friggin' M- to kind of break up those things, or is that a stylistic choice?
I would do a dash.
All right, use a dash.
I think it's how abrupt it is. If you trail off and I interrupt,
Okay.
we're looking at
So-
ellipses.
Trailing, yeah.
If
Right.
it's sudden,
So there's a difference
it's boom, cut.
there's a difference between being interrupted and you losing your train of thought as a speaker.
That's right.
Okay, so if you're being interrupted, so somebody is speaking over you, dash, okay?
Yeah.
Because somebody's cut you off, and what in your
There would have been more,
fiction,
yeah.
there should be somebody else speaking in the next line, in the next paragraph, that cut over you. Ellipsis, I like to see them being used when someone is thinking.
Yeah.
All right, it indicates they're thinking, or they've lost their train of thought. Maybe there's something else going on, and so they're distracted.
Yeah.
It means that, yes, they've stopped speaking. Maybe it's a pause because they're thinking about what they want to say next, or they just don't complete the thought, the sentence, what they're saying for some reason.
So that sentence you just said, how would that be punctuated? They don't complete the... Are those commas in...
Ellipsis.
Those are Shatner commas.
Yeah.
They're Shatner marks?
And,
It's just Shatner's face and
okay.
a JPEG.
And that's how they would be used in fiction.
By the way,
Um,
if I may, Rabin says, just trying to piece together a painful punctuation line, don't mind me, and then afterwards, that was a couple minutes ago, well, a minute or so ago, he says, I do appreciate the M- versus ellipsis delineation as often as I can. Someday it'll sink in. Now, what I want to point out is, it takes time to sink in, guys. Whether it's when to use a comma versus a period, or anything beyond that, it takes time and practice. Aaron earlier in the show mentioned 10,000 hours to get the mastery of any skill. Yeah.
Malcolm Gladwell, Outliers is the name of the book that he talks about that in.
There we go, from 1932.
And remember, once you finally get so that you think you have a grasp on it, it's going to change. Because I like the Oxford comma, which means if you have a list of 3, it's item 1, comma, item 2, comma, and your third item.
Because the other way is
There's
wrong.
A lot of people
Hitler,
who say
Kennedy, and strippers.
So there's a lot of people who are like, yeah, you don't need that comma before the and.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear they're so wrong.
So right now it's a stylistic choice, and I always use that extra comma.
Hold on.
I use a lot of commas, and I've been told I use too many.
I get, which is stylistic again. By the way, I got to write down Oxford commas because I think we could do a whole show on mocking the people that don't use them. I'm just saying.
There's all sorts of memes on it.
And there
just
is.
so you know that the Navy style guide says no to the Oxford comma. And
They could be wrong. It's okay.
Time.
Aaron, oh my God, what the hell is that
Sailors
link,
are
dude?
never wrong.
What's that?
I said sailors are never wrong.
Sailors are never wrong. Really? That's not what the
As an
Marines on their
ex-sailor,
boat said.
I stick to that.
Aaron, you want to talk about as a Marine that was on a boat? Was there ever a wrong? Anyhow, moving on with the topic.
All the time.
Moving on with the topic. We got about 5 more minutes of the topic, then we got a 5-minute wrap up. So, Tara, Aaron, Michael, Tempe, and I'm going to start with Tempe and go backwards through that list, giving Tara the last word, actually me the last word after everybody. Anybody has any questions about any of the topics or even something else at this point in time that we talked about tonight, please feel free to type them in the chat. Tempe, if you have any closing thoughts on this or any questions on this, and I stress questions, you may have noticed, because as writers, that's usually where we're like, wait, what? Because I wasn't listening. What? Tempe, you got anything?
Invest in a good editor.
Okay, it's a good piece of advice.
Invest in a good editor. I mean,
Invest.
Yes, if you've got
Oh,
good.
Hold on 1 second, guys. 1 second here. We just had Skype take a hiccup. I just want to make sure everything's still... Yep, everything still looks good. Tempe, carry on. Maybe start again.
Yeah, just invest in a good editor. I mean, that way if you've got any questions, give it to somebody who knows exactly what they need to do to clean it up. And, look at the red line edits. I don't, but look at the red line edits, and that's a quick way to learn.
Tempe, if I may, look at them next time. Not to correct them. You could do the mass correct.
Right.
Just see what's being marked, because you might see, oh, I'm constantly doing that. And I'm saying yes to the correct, so maybe I can write it that way. Maybe you won't, because you are just word flowing and then passing it on without even giving it a second read, which I did for a long time. So you're not
for me it's a time issue, because when I get it back from Tara, then I order the cover art, and I try to have it done before the cover art gets done so I can get it out there. It's just a time issue for me.
That's a whole nother show all about enjoy the journey.
Yes.
But yeah, it's because I'm with you. I'm the same way, and I keep telling myself, slow it down. But anyhow, we'll worry about that another time. Michael.
Yeah, I think I'll just reiterate. Work on all you guys work on creating, everyone in the audience, creating your own style guide, and look at what you do, and look at people you like, whose style you like, and may want to implement certain parts. Like I took a piece of Brian Jakes, and I took a piece of Associated Press. And
are you saying Brian Jacques?
Jakes.
Is it pronounced Jakes? J-A?
It's pronounced Jakes.
C-Q-E-S or whatever it is?
Yeah. It's pronounced Jakes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I've never Googled how he likes it pronounced.
Yeah, in the About the Author section, he always puts a pronunciation guide of his name.
So that's Madamo for everybody that doesn't know. With the what's the name of the whole series?
Redwall.
Thank you. Thank you. The Redwall series. Good books. Good books. Especially
I like him.
Yeah. Go on, Michael. Sorry.
Yeah. Consistency is the most important thing.
Yeah, unless your editor tells you to stomp it.
That's true.
Aaron.
actually just want to hit back on a couple things that have been mentioned here. One, when we talk about stylistic guide and the evolution, the Harry Potter series is a great example of this because it starts off with essentially a 11, 12-year-old, and it's short, fast words, and as it goes through each year, the writing becomes more and more complex as both the author grows and as we, the audience,
I've commented
grew
on
with
that
it.
many times, how the style of writing seems to change with the age of the characters and the readers.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go on.
But from a stylistic point, you pick up book 1 and you pick up book 7, and they are both Harry Potter novels, and you know that instantly. To contrast that, if you ever get a chance, read The Never-Ending Story, because half of it happens in the real world, half of it happens in the imaginary world, and the author uses different colors through the book. So if you get the hardback version, it's a stylistic choice he made to delineate as a hard delineation between what's happening to Bastion and what's happening on the other side. And then going back to Michael's comments, Brian Jakes, we write as we talk, and we write in the King's English, or the Queen's English, as the case may be.
What are you, a century behind with the King's English?
Hey, she's only 80. But Brian does stylistic dialogue where he'll use the, instead of saying I've, he'll do the I've. And Rogue from the X-Men is always written that way. Deadpool is always written as though he's got gravel. Thor has always got the very stylized.
That is some cool stuff. That
Okay, don't
comic
change
books
your
do.
font in your novels to fit your character's voice. Bad idea. But in great idea.
But in a visual novel, like Michael does, it can create the impression that there's a stylized way that they are speaking
Mike,
above and beyond the tone.
So
in the
Michael,
call-outs, maybe, yeah.
in Chicken Boy, is that called a visual novel instead of a graphic novel or comic book? Is that called a visual novel?
I call it an illustrated chapter book, is what I call it.
I love the
I
idea.
do have...
The phrase visual novel appeals to me.
It is interesting. I have not heard that before.
At least he didn't say it
Mega
was unique.
Tokyo
I
is
do
doing it
some
that way.
call-outs here. So you can see some of the different onomatopoeia words are drawn in different styles.
Nice. I like how your style has changed, but still has the same essence. There, I've got to look through that next time we hang out.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I'm sorry, Aaron. Please finish your thoughts. I've interrupted.
No, that was just the things that kind of out there from a stylistic, and it affects the punctuation and all that stuff because how we talk is all there. Penn Jillette talks about his son teaching him how to read a script. The comma is there for a reason. The period is a hard stop. It's telling you how it's supposed to be read, and if we don't do that as authors...
2 minutes left.
That's true.
We still got wrap
That's
up.
all I got.
Tara,
if we don't do it as authors,
since
they're going
you'd
to read
have
it
the
a different
most to
way.
say, we gave you the least amount of time, and you're totally dark now. What happened there?
The flashlight just went out. That was kind of giving me some illumination.
You still
so
have a
my
red
apologies.
beam on your head, though. There's...
Yeah, it's like almost gone, and I'm like,
Taurus, feed us
Well, she's
your words
converted
of
to a
wisdom.
visual novel.
As an editor, what do you want us to know?
find a good when you find an editor, ask them what style guide they use. Strunk and White's really good. Get one so that you're both on the same page, so that when you are going to look at a resource on how you should use something, that you're looking at the same resource that your editor's looking at. If you have one to use, most editors, I mean, I could take a picture of my shelf at work. I have 2 full shelves of different style guides, grammar resources, dictionaries, etc. So if you have one that you're using, let your editor know, because if they're an editor who works as an editor, if they know what they're doing somewhat, they're going to go get a copy and use that for your work.
I'm glad to hear you said Strunk and White, because that's actually my go-to that hasn't been mentioned before that moment. Not that I've read it recently or often, but I've read it. So anyhow, let me wrap this up. Tempe, Michael, Tara, Aaron, thank you for joining me here in the tavern on Right Night.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us, Sandy.
Guys,
Thank you.
everybody who jumped in with comments or viewing or hanging out or questions, I appreciate that. Everybody else who is listening to this podcast after the fact, feel free to join us live, but thank you for listening. Let's raise our glasses to all these folks, including ourselves. Happy birthday, Michael! Go
Thank
grab
you.
his book.
Yay!
And we're out of here. Here's our outro music. New outro music.
Hey.
Thank you for joining author Travis I. Sivart and the other writers, content creators, and all-around amazing people for our discussion here on Right Night. Join us again soon, and until you do, make sure you create with passion, enjoy the journey, and remember, every night can be right night.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. We'll catch you again in a week. We're on the podcast.
This holiday season, we all wish for hope and healing. Children and families who spend their holidays at the hospital deserve a reason to believe in first steps, in giggles, high fives, and hugs. For 150 years, Children's National Hospital has provided world-class care and groundbreaking research. Please donate today to help patients and healthcare heroes this holiday season. Visit childrensnational.org/holiday. That's childrensnational.org/holiday.